Mr. Metaxa, I wanted to make you some question about related to the role of stock exchange in economic operation on culture diplomacy. And the first one is that you have mentioned that Cyprus had to get out of the crisis. And I wanted to know if did culture diplomacy help Cyprus to get out of the crisis, and if it yes, why?
This crisis, which affected Cyprus and which led to the total collapse of the banking sector, was a very complicated crisis. Obviously, Cyprus could not get out of the crisis on its own. It needed a lot of help. It needed first to put its house in order, but then it needed little help from my friends, as the song goes. And indeed, we received a lot of help from our creditors and directions how to get out of this crisis. And yes, the acceptance of rules which were imposed, I would say, by our creditors, by our partners in the Eurozone, has helped a lot Cyprus to go forward. And you know what's important when you are in these associations like the EU and the Eurozone is that you have to accept certain rules. And these rules indeed were very helpful to us.
Good. And do you think that the globalization aspects in economic, for example, is getting more wide all over the world? And did this aspect has been influenced by culture diplomacy in general?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. Globalization should be happen in a structured way. It should not happen in a haphazard way. And here is what is very important to find common denominators. We have China and America, two totally distinct cultures coming together in the global environment. And there have to be rules, has to get to know each other. I have to say that the past year we have listed some companies from China on our stock exchange. And yes, when discussing with my Chinese friends, I found that they have hard time to understand certain things that are happening in a European country. And yes, I had hard time to understand what they wanted. It took me some time. So it's here when cultural diplomacy comes in place, and it's here when rules to bring cultures together are very important. And at the same time, every culture has certain things which are common with other cultures. For example, transparency. For example, corporate governance rules. These, in many cultures, are close. So if we build upon them, then we can create in a globalized environment common understanding. Because companies, multinational organizations have to operate in a number of countries, in a number of cultures, in a number of different legal jurisdictions. So yes, cultural understanding and cultural diplomacy are at the center and should be at the center of what is going on today.
Excellent answers. And I have my last question, which is you have mentioned a lot about visionary during your speech on the conference, and I wanted to know that this visionary should be different from each other, but different culture to be more, for example, more efficient in the field of economic, or they should just uh, spread their culture with their ideas, of course, in transparency to each other to be reliable or not?
At the stage that the world economy and the world political situation is today, we need visionaries. When you have all these wars taking place, when you have terrorism, when you have the insecurity which faces major European capitals, we need solutions. And solutions, in order to come, they have to come from people. And I heard today, for example, that like in Europe, we have created a European Parliament. There should be a Parliament of the United Nations, where not only government should be represented, but the citizens of the world. This is a very visionary idea. And we need similar ideas to take us forward. It is a time that certain fundamental principles have to be reestablished, and it is time that we see a new vision of what's going on. The biggest example is what happens in the Eurozone and what happens in the unification of capital markets. We are a very small actor in what goes on internationally. But yes, in Europe, we have managed to have a unified capital market, we have common rules, and this was because of visionaries. We need more governance in Europe. We need the European countries to come together. I was listening to the speech and I agree with everything by the ex-finance minister of Germany, that he said he was describing the future. He said on the one side will be America and on the other will be China. But why should we give away that role as Europeans? We need visionaries in Europe to bring us together, the various cultures and the various countries. We have a common history, we have common values, and these visionaries can put Europe back on the world track. So yes, I strongly believe in visionaries. I believe that at the situation that today we need to find solutions. War has never and will never solve problems. Every war creates many other problems. And it is a time that we sit back and we think what war we have to leave behind for our children.
Thank you very much. It was an excellent answer, and I have nothing to say more, except that can Cyprus had an important role in the European countries to be, for example, the unification of the European countries related what the professor, former finance minister of Germany said, that the country of the European, if they are united, they can be more powerful in the eyes of the world.
I have been very miserable if I have left Berlin and I have not been asked this question. Thank you so much for this question. Cyprus is a European country with strong European history. You can find the origins of the European history in Cyprus. At the same time, Cyprus belongs in the Middle East, and Cyprus has very strong ties with other countries in the Middle East. So Cyprus can play a vital role in promoting the interests of the European Union in this troubled area of the world. We are the outpost of the European Union, with the natural ally of the European Union, and you can have very much Europe play its role in the Middle East. And the basic role that Europe can play in the Middle East, if the principles of which the European Union is being built and transplanted in the countries of the area. If we can convince countries to get our code of corporate governance, to get our, let's say, regulations about transparency, about free flow of information, then I believe we are contributing from another perspective to a very significant transformation. As small countries like Europe, like Cyprus, can have very much, because in the area we are not considered as competitors by anybody. We are so small, we are not helping the interests of anybody, so are accepted as an ambassador. And this is a role that Cyprus can play in the Middle East. We can be the ambassador of the European Union, and we can help the European Union project its image, its values in the area. This is my vision for Cyprus, and this is something which I'm working very hard. I have contact with all the exchanges in the area. We have common initiatives in place with many of the exchanges. We had the chairman of the Egyptian Stock Exchange. We are working very closely with Egypt. We are working very closely with Tel Aviv, and we are working very closely with other exchanges in the region to establish common understanding. Yes, I will be very happy if I see Europe promoting that role of Cyprus. We as Cyprus have promoted this role, and we are very much indebted to Europe for the help that we have received in the recent years.